When we first started looking at doing a festival, myself and my business partner John, we sort of looked at the location of where the majority of festivals were around the UK, realised that the South Coast was pretty poorly served. I was really familiar with, Portsmouth, Southampton, the whole area, and just started looking around. So we were looking around the whole South Coast to start with. It wasn't just specifically the Isle of Wight. And then we jumped on a ferry, came over, looked at some really crummy sort of holiday lets and campsites, and we were kind of coming up with these grand visions in our heads that were completely naive. And then eventually Kate, who's become our on-island producer, suggested Robin Hill, which rang a bell with me, and I remembered it from when I was a kid. And we went down there, and it just all seemed to fit into place. It's absolutely essential right from the off that we had a good business relationship with both Robin Hill and with the whole island, and our whole sort of ethos has always been, don't upset the locals, keep people on side, and not in a cynical way, but actually let's work with everyone, from local food to local traders and craftsmen, and trying to keep it as much Isle of Wight based as possible. Pretty much everyone from the council, fire, police, ambulance, ferries have all been kind of up for a conversation with us. But in the early days, it was obviously they didn't know who we really were. Obviously my sort of Radio 1 credentials helped a little bit in that there was some sort of story there, but we had no sort of proven track record of doing a festival, or that we actually knew what we were doing. And it's kind of grown until now. All those links are really solid. I feel that we're a real part of the island's culture, and we know all those people, right across the board in all those fields, and it's been vital that we have had that support. And I do take my hat off to all those people for having had the faith in us, and the Isle of Wight Festival as well, which now bring over 100,000 people down to the Isle of Wight each year for the festivals. I think the enthusiasm and support from the local council and just everyone has sort of grown exponentially with Bestival's success. Obviously the more people we bring to the island, the more money that brings to the economy. I've seen sort of figures I can't remember, but it's in the millions that the Isle of Wight Festival and Bestival bring to the island. So I think it's a crucial part of the island's kind of tourism calendar now, and I think everyone wants that to keep going successfully. You don't get any kind of any favours. You still have to work for everything. You still have to go through the same health and safety. There's an awful lot of stuff that red tape and everything that you have to go through with any council. And the police bills are still big. We have to have a mobile hospital on site. So you're still paying a lot of money for all these things, but yeah, it's a success, so can't complain. Bestival 2010 sold out a few weeks ago. Very pleased with that. Never take it for granted that we will sell out, and we're up to 46,000 tickets now, so it's a lot of tickets to sell. And I put it down to a combination of obviously the bands and the acts, but we've had a lot of research done on Bestival, and only about 25% of people actually say they come because of the acts, and 75% of people say they come because of the atmosphere and the general sort of ambience of Bestival. So, yeah, partly the acts, but also I think just keeping all the exciting ideas that we kind of try and do at Bestival going, whether that's our sort of green eco fields, Tomorrow's World, or the inflatable church, some of the daft stuff, the Morris dancing, the WIT tent, the local stuff, the food, it's all part of the picture. The whole sort of independent stroke corporate ethos has always been sort of top of our agenda. We are 100% independent. No one owns any part of the business apart from us and the partners. So it's we've been offered money by some of the bigger festival groups. We've been offered a lot of money by sort of sponsors who want to become a headline sponsor, but I think part of Bestival's success is that it's got minimal sponsorship, and I won't lie and say there's no visible sponsorship on site. There is, but we always make sure that we drive how that is perceived by the audience. So yes, it's vitally important every year. Every sort of single decision that we take is kind of examined to make sure that we're not overstepping the mark. And Yeah, I mean, ever since we started Bestival, we've always looked at, you know, the green issues, the eco issues. Kate Jackman, our island producer, has, you know, always been in our ears going, look, Robbie, you need to pay attention to this stuff. Obviously, you know, now it's every day in the media, so it's kind of obvious to most people what we need to do. But I think from an early stage, we've been trying to do that, and every year we're kind of making more and more improvements, you know, starting off with recycling and now kind of just really trying to run everything on solar power or biofuel, or, you know, trying to get people to come by coaches rather than individual cars. You know, working with the ferry companies and the bus companies. We've got a much better system this year with Southern Vectis, you know, running coaches from all parts of the country. So it's totally crucial. I think, you know, again, the ferries come into this because ferries aren't the greatest user of fuels, and the more people we can get onto one vehicle on the ferry, the better. So, you know, the less ferries, the less kind of eco-unfriendliness. So, yeah, it's always on our mind, and, you know, we actively spend part of our budget on that each year to try and make it better, and we really try and hammer the message home to our punters. Everyone who's ever come to Bestival and had a little look around the Isle of Wight, which they hopefully do when they come here, they don't just come to the site and leave. You know, there's so many people now after 7 years that use this as part of their holiday. You know, they build Bestival into their holiday, so they come here and then they go on somewhere else, or they stay in a B&B while they're at Bestival, and, you know, they come in and out of the site, and yeah, it's become more of a sort of holiday spot. And I think that's the great thing about the Isle of Wight, is it's, you know, you get on the ferry, you know you're going on a holiday or a break, and you sort of leave everything else behind you. And I still feel like that after having come here hundreds of times. I still sort of feel that getting on the ferry is a sort of release from the sort of normal daily life in London or wherever you come from, and that's really great. You know, what we actively did when we started Bestival was we needed to get out there and see where there was going to be a market for us, and we've been lucky that we've found that, you know, a lot of people come from the south of England, a lot of people from London. Get past the sort of Manchester area, not many people actually come to Manchester to Bestival, so you can see that that's kind of where our market is. So yeah, if you're starting something up, you know, you need to, are there enough people that are going to come to the show? You know, what ticket price are you going to set? Can you get access to the bands? I mean, the festival market is ridiculously competitive now, and, you know, we took a risk by setting up Camp Bestival a couple of years ago. That paid off because we saw a niche for a family-friendly festival. I've got a sort of inkling in my head of a new festival I want to start up, because Bestival has got big. You know, I want to get back to the roots of what we did. So, you know, I think for anyone that's looking to do it, you just need to be kind of brave. You need to have really good financial support. You know, festivals aren't cheap. You know, it's millions of pounds to put on a festival over 40,000 people, and to even start a 5,000 capacity festival, you need, you know, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds. So you need financial security in it, and you know, you need a good bank manager. The future of Bestival on the island, we've got really good new contracts in place with Farmer Groves and the Robin Hill guys for the next few years. You know, we're totally intent on building Bestival here, and, you know, keeping it going here. You know, working more and more with local businesses, trying to get as much local supply, you know, trying to get as many local suppliers as possible to work with us. You know, just across the board, we need to make the show cheaper, and we need to keep everyone down here happy. So it's an obvious kind of relationship to have. And yeah, I mean, I absolutely love being here. You know, we've got a house down here now. We pretty much live down here, and it's home.